1, rating the RNC. Is there a deep bench, or is it always and only Donald Trump? 2, carrying a ladder through a crowd, spending a half hour on the roof under the surveillance of Secret Service. Where exactly is the failure that led to an attempted assassination of Donald Trump? Where exactly is the failure of the Secret Service? 3, top 3 most badass responses to an attempted assassination of a president. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com and on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Always on demand, if you're listening, on terrestrial radio from coast to coast by subscribing on Apple or Spotify. Or if you want to watch the Will Cain Show, just hit subscribe on YouTube. Coming up on today's show, we're going to hang out with my buddy, my Fox and Friends weekend co-host. We're going to hang out with Pete Hegseth for an episode of Off the Rails. Willisha, two-a-days, Young Establishment James, Tinfoil Pat. Help me work through this for just a moment. I was, right before we came on air, watching a video. I was watching a video from MSNBC where Michael Steele, former president of the Republican Party, was making an argument to Ari Melber that we have a right to know after 3 days the extent of the injuries to Donald Trump's ear. Steele claims if you are hit by, quote, a high-caliber bullet, it would basically destroy the ear. There are reports, according to Steele, that it's a shard of glass from a broken teleprompter. And that if it's a medical impact on a presidential candidate, we as a public have a right to know. Now, in response to that, Melber said, well, there's a certain grace period, and we're coming to the end of that when it comes to 3 days. Now, interesting, all of a sudden, that Melber has some journalistic desire to know the truth about the health of a president within 3 days after it being ignored for 3 years, of course. But set that aside for just a minute, okay? He makes a comparison between the public's demand and desire to know about Joe Biden's mental capacity to the, admittedly, open curiosities about the extent of Trump's ear. I think any of us could, I'd love to know more. Like, what happened and how bad is it? I think all of us would like to know, right? That's curious. But there's something else going on here. Like, to make a comparison to the public desiring to know about the mental capacity of Joe Biden. Okay, like, help me work through this, guys. Like, we as a public have a right to know if our sitting president is of sound mind because it impacts his ability to do the job. I don't see anything about Donald Trump's ear that rises to the level of news necessity beyond curiosity. Like, even if it is glass. What I'm getting at is, what are you getting at, MSNBC? Why do you think these two open questions are of equal news value?
Yeah, it's just kind of like, hey, look, this is bad also. You know, with Biden, they're just trying to compare the two so they have something to talk about with, you know, the attack on Biden and his mental ability and cognitive ability.
I think that's part of it. Okay, I think there is an equivalency thing that they're so guilty of. Like, that's why their initial CNN headline was Trump falls down. Like, what that was is they were doing an equivalency thing to Biden's frailty, right? They were implying to the audience that, this 77-year-old fell down, like you've been accusing Biden of being frail. And I do think there's an element to it as to what you're saying. Like, you demanded to know all these things about Joe Biden, and you're not demanding to know about Donald Trump's ear. But I don't think that's everything, because that doesn't pass the smell test. Like, of course, the mental capacity of a sitting president is of not equal curiosity to the damage to a campaign's ear, a guy running for president's ear. I think there's something deeper. I think the implication is they're saying at the highest levels of a news agency now, they're implying that this is staged. Yeah. That's why they want to know the answers to that question. Right, young James?
It seems like they're going down the conspiracy rabbit hole, which is they're not totally going into it because they don't want to get in trouble, but they're at least putting out some feelers that are going into was it a shard of glass? Did he fake it? Did he have ketchup? Bunch of nonsense. And I'll tell you, two quick things on the facts. One, somebody's dead, and two, there's video that the teleprompters are fully intact. And I mean, on the Trump,
I don't even care if it's the teleprompter.
Yeah,
that is meaningless details, right? And Steele knows nothing about ammunition. Like, I mean, I saw a lady, by the way, hold up several bullets. They are unexpended cartridges. They are, with the gunpowder and the shell casing are still intact. So they're like, this big or whatever. I'm holding it up on screen, about 2.5 inches in depth. But, a bullet, once it's been fired, is about, couple millimeters in length and diameter. And so he knows nothing about that. But it seems clear to me, like, to your point, James, of like, a dude is dead.
Yeah.
2 others critically injured. And you're toying around with what type of notion here? You're not just doing the moral equivalency of, if you want to know about Biden, then you got to know about Trump. What? No. One is about your ear, and the other is about your brain. One is about a sitting president. One is about a guy running for president. So it seems to me you are suggesting that you're not getting the answers to these questions because you think the whole thing is a hoax. And that is if you're a random internet poster, and by the way, when I say random, I want to tell you something. When I scroll my X or whatever, I don't follow a bunch of randos and I don't read replies that much. I'm going to be real with you. I'm talking about people. Okay, I'm going to use 2 names. I'm going to give you an example. Clarence Hill, who writes for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram and covers the Dallas Cowboys, has jumped straight into this BS, and I don't understand how you do that and get away with having a job at a major market newspaper. And Jeff Pearlman, who's written best-selling books about sports figures from Brett Favre to whoever, is doing the same thing by demanding answers to these questions. And I want to know what you're getting at. I want to know, are you suggesting that Donald Trump cavalierly had a dude killed to go up in the polls that he was already leading while his opponent was self-imploding because his brain is mush? Like, I want to know what you're doing, MSNBC.
There's a comedian on Twitter too who writes a full article, and it's a joking script that's funnier than anything SNL's put out in the past 10 years. And they joke about Dan Scavino saying, "All right, this is good. Just play golf and be quiet till the election." And Don and Eric basically suggesting this whole conspiracy, and it's laughable. It's kind of funny, but it shows how ridiculous the whole thing is.
All right, well, I just had to get that off my chest. I had to figure out, I don't do this with randos. Like, these are people that have publication. Like, they're paid for their thoughts and to write and to go on television. They're paid to go on MSNBC. All right. I'm going to call an audible because what I was going to do today is start with a monologue. I was going to start with a monologue with you about the depth of the Republican bench. Okay? I've been thinking about this in the middle of the RNC as I've been watching speaker after speaker come up. Okay? And I've been thinking about it because I heard, for example, my colleague at Fox, Dana Perino, say the bench is so deep. And if I'm being real with you, I don't feel the same way. I don't come away with the same opinion. And I have a reason for that, okay? And it's because I want to talk about ideology. I want to talk about wisdom, judgment, leadership, charisma, and whether or not there is anything bigger than Donald Trump, including Trumpism. But instead of monologuing, I want to get into it. Let's get into story number 1. He's my co-host on Fox and Friends Weekend. He is off the rails. He's off the grid. He's our guy. He's Pete Hegseth. And he's at the RNC. What's up?
What's up,
Terminally tan,
How you
Pete
doing?
Hegseth.
Terminally
I'm
tan.
Good. So you look even tanner now than you did at a diner this morning on Fox.
I look like I'm glowing right now. I'm not pregnant. I don't know what's going on here.
Hey, so I don't know when you jumped on and put that headset on, and I don't know if you've heard what I was talking about coming in.
Yeah, I did.
So I was thinking about this, Hegseth. Okay, I'm going to start with an open question to you before I give you my opinion. I would like to know what you think. Not about the RNC, because I think the RNC seems to be going great. There's a great, everyone likes to, the buzzword of the moment is unity and all that, and that's great, and it's true. But I'm more curious about this, Pete. You've been in the auditorium, I believe, every night. You've been doing something for Fox Nation. You've probably seen almost all these speakers. What do you think? Like, what's your rating overall of these individuals, not as surrogates of Donald Trump? That's not what I'm talking about. Not as their endorsement of Donald Trump. But I'm just curious how you rate these people as leaders from a stage, not from a governor's office, or not from a senator's office.
You're talking about
from a stage.
From a stage as prospective 2028 candidates? Is that what you're referring to when you're talking about a bench?
I guess I
that's
am.
What you wanted to open up as? Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm talking about. 2028.
Yeah, that's skipping ahead of squash. But I will say they're great surrogates. I think almost all of what they're saying is genuine, especially after what happened on Saturday night, which is dominating every aspect of this convention, whether people state it or not. I guess I take maybe a little bit more of a superficial take in that I look at that stage and I see a lot of capable, philosophically aligned, conservative, articulate men and women taking to the stage, making a case for the country that to me doesn't sound ideological at all. The biggest takeaway for me has been the level of straight-up common sense that speakers are talking about. We're not in the minutia of conservative philosophy here. We are in the realm of the left has gone and lost their damn mind. Donald Trump is strong enough to fight them, so they call him a radical. But here are the basic common sense things that he stands for, which to your point, most of those people on that stage probably would have not come to that conclusion were it not for Donald Trump. This isn't a party entirely remade by his courage, his view of where the American people are. But yes, I watched someone like Marco Rubio was interesting. Is an interesting example, and I didn't even see his entire speech because halfway through his speech, I had to go back for the Fox Nation show. But I had also kind of decided it was meh. Like, okay, we've seen Marco before. It's pretty.
Right.
Now, by the time I got over there, everyone was raving about the final part of his speech. So I think I missed the best part of the speech, and I'll have to go back and look at it. But there is this sense of we know a lot of these people. We probably know what their ceiling is, with the exception of a few. I think J.D. Vance is one of those exceptions. His part of the ingredient of modern politics is a background or a story that is compelling, that takes you to the next level, or a name ID or an affinity or an authenticity that people truly connect to beyond winning one Senate race in a key state and the ability to give a few good speeches, which used to be the recipe for being a nominee as long as you were silver-tongued. And I think Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio are two great examples of those types of men who would have been central casting for a conservative leader, who still are conservative leaders, but maybe not in the rotation for the next 10 years based on what happened when they ran into the Donald Trump buzzsaw. So I see J.D. Vance. I think Vivek passed that test in his speech. I still think there's a lot of growth left in him, but man, he speaks the language with an interesting background that people certainly do connect to. I think the bench is fairly deep, Will, but I want to know what you think. I mean, from what you're watching,
well, I don't want to. I heard you push back on me in your very nice guy way and use a word that is just not in my rotation, that I've jumped ahead of squosh. That's like not, you're never going to hear me say that unless I'm quoting Pete Hegseth.
A little bit.
And here, let me tell you why I'm thinking about this. Let me tell you why I'm thinking about it. I'm not jumping ahead because I'm like not interested in Donald Trump. I'm jumping ahead to 2028 for three reasons. One, that's what a lot of these people are doing. They're setting themselves up for 2028. Correct. And I like to call it the way Correct. It is. And that's the way it is. And I even think some of them are faking it. If I'm being real with you, Pete, I don't think some of them believe or are really loyally behind Donald Trump. Okay? I don't think Nikki Haley is. That's one. But I'm going to tell you, I think there's more than one. Okay. Two, Barack Obama gave a speech in 2004 that set himself up for the presidency at the DNC. He went out there. You know, he stole, wasn't it 04 was it 2000? I can't remember which one it was.
And it would have been 04. Yes, 04.
04, I think, yeah. It rocketed him to stardom, right? That speech at the DNC. So they all know that can happen, and they're all doing it. And 3, J.D. Vance. That's why I'm bringing it up. Because part of the conversation is, does J.D. Vance set up Trumpism to be bigger than Donald Trump? Does he carry America first into the future beyond Donald Trump? And I don't want to monologue. This is my thoughts, Pete, and I've changed a lot on this. I begin to think that I look at DeSantis and Youngkin and all these guys, and I'm like, they're really good governors. And they execute conservative policy and maybe, to your point, maybe even just common sense policy. But this moment that you and I were born into, and probably everybody listening, most everybody listening, the only people exempted would be the very young. I begin to think is a historical aberration, Pete. It's the age of ideology. And for conservatives, that ran from about William F. Buckley through maybe George W. Bush, but certainly Ronald Reagan. And that was the age of conservative, that's the golden era, right? That's the ideology of conservatism. And it trails the progressive ideology, which began with Marx. But essentially, the 20th century is the century of ideology. But the longer arc of humanity and leadership is predicated on things outside of ideology, like wisdom, judgment, strength, common sense, and charisma. Those things. Like, you ride into town and you take over a town, you lean on those 3 things, those 5 things. You don't lean on, let me tell you about, Edmund Burke.
Sure.
Like, you don't win the town over by going,
Friedman.
now if we could all gather around our Burke textbooks. And I think in a way Donald Trump is a reversion to the arc of humanity. Do you see what I'm saying? And as I look at those people that you named and that I'm watching on the stage, I don't see anyone. And it's an impossible task to say meets the bar of Trump, but I don't yet see someone that satisfies what I think is the old and the new standard of leadership.
That's a fair point. I think you are right that we're outside of an age of ideology, of conservatism. A lot of people are looking around and saying, well, what in the world are we conserving anymore? It is back to basics in what we're fighting for. I think if you listen to the names the names I listed, you've got J.D. Vance with, Hillbilly Elegy and this sort of cultural celebrity that he was, and Vivek Ramaswamy. Those are the types. And then I think there are outside media figures. I don't think we're counting in the Trump kids. I don't think we're counting in someone like Tucker. I don't think we're counting in someone like Charlie Kirk and his crew. And there are some really businessmen, Elon Musk types. Like, there are those people out on the horizon with interesting stories, building interesting things, who don't have a pin on their lapel and aren't sort of trying to calculate every speech and every moment toward this inching forward to the apex that I don't think any of us are anticipating right now. And the speeches those people have given and will give will be it'll be a part of their story, but I don't know that conventions have the same punch as they had in the 80s or the 90s or 2000s, where you had this, everyone coveted this certain time slot because it meant the party elders had said you are next. The closest to that is the choosing of J.D. Vance, which is a generational choice. Other than that, everyone else is going to get a chance to make a speech that they can clip and push out on social media and might make people more interested in them. But the bosses aren't. We're just not in a boss's moment. We're in a, everything is reflecting off of Trump, and what happens after him is going to be. It is really. Will, we're going to have it's going to be interesting to analyze a post-Trump world when we get there. But right now, I think it's good for the country and good for the party that everything is orbiting around him, because it keeps him focused on basic issues other than reverting back to the establishment norm, which is let's talk about marginal tax rates and how to reform Social Security. And it sounds really nice at Heritage or at other think tanks, but voters aren't thinking about it, so we miss voters and we lose elections. Trump is focused on winning elections, and there are some things that take him out of alignment with conservatism, but I'm not a conservative because I'm a conservative. I'm a conservative because I love America. And if there are conservative policies that aren't in service of that larger cause, then what are we doing?
I love the point you made. Like, I guess that like the highlighters, the headliners have been like the governors and the senators. But in the next couple of days, you're going to hear from Tucker. To your point, you're going to hear. You're not going to hear from Elon Musk, but I think you're right. Look outside. Maybe that's. And by the way, I'm not taking anything away from DeSantis. The great governors. I'm just trying to be a realist about the qualities that lead to the highest levels of leadership. And what I would suggest to you is just go like this: Trump, Obama, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, Ronald Reagan. Big, charismatic personalities, all who would walk into a room and you'd be like, whoa, they are here. The only two people I didn't mention there were George H.W. Bush and Joe Biden. And I would say, truth is, younger Joe Biden might actually satisfy that criteria. Old Joe Biden's different. And H.W. wrote on, I think H.W. wrote on Reagan's coattails. That's what that was, his presidency. It wasn't he was this big personality.
Another thing that bolsters your perspective, Will, is we've only completed 2 days. So think about all those big names. They got a Tuesday speaking spot, which is considered the second, the third best. I mean, Wednesday today is sort of a bigger spotlight, and certainly Thursday would be considered the most prime time territory with the most eyeballs. So, that's pretty Trumpian thing to do, to say all of my opponents you took on Tuesday, and then we'll move on past that. It's part of it.
By the way, some of the most charismatic, like you brought up the family members. I forgot to mention them. Lara Trump was great. I was like really impressed with Lara Trump last night. Hey, so you bring up Trump. This came up yesterday. I don't know if you know this, but I talked about you yesterday. And I had Josh Holmes of the Ruthless podcast on here. And the conversation's about J.D. Vance. And J.D. Vance has said some real anti-Trump things in his past. Really anti-Trump, more than you or I or anyone else ever has, right? And what I said yesterday is I like that J.D. Vance has changed his mind. I think that if we're being real, everyone has. No one, very few people were born to Trump. They saw it at some point, right? Some saw it maybe in 13 when he was attacking Obama. Some saw it in 15, 16. I said yesterday, my conversion to Trump was like 18, 20, right? In that range. And I brought you up. I said, look, he's pretty open about it. My friend Pete, he's a big supporter of Donald Trump, but he wasn't always. And I said, I would like to do a show where everyone catalogs the moment of their conversion. So now that I have you, I just kind of would like to know, like I think I know the timeline for you, and I don't think it's an overnight thing for anybody. I don't think it's an epiphany. I think it's a little bit of a snowball effect. But I'm curious a little bit, because I brought you up, what that is for you.
Dude, it's a real thing, and that would be a great pot. I think you'd hit everyone in the Republican spectrum, because everyone has that moment if they're being honest about it for the most part. And there are some who have this sort of sycophant, politically expedient view, and they're pretty easy to tease out, especially in moments of crisis. And so I'm not really counting that. These are people that are true supporters. I mean, for me, it was basically April, May, June of 2016. It's after I had gone from Rubio to Cruz to definitely not Hillary Clinton to what in the world do I do here? I'm an Iraq vet who calls my war a dumb war, and I don't like that, and I'm not used to this rhetoric, and I used to be kind of an establishment guy, and I'm sort of a neocon guy, and it was really hard. But that thinking through, and frankly, a lot of it was watching, because Tucker was Fox and Friends Weekend at that point, and he was going through some of the same process, and watching him articulate Trump in real time as sort of one of his understudies that did Fox and Friends Weekend and Fox and Friends all the time was fascinating. But had the same moment. And I remember a 4th of July party I threw at my house where I pulled out a MAGA hat and put it on, and no one knew that I was just, and it was this shock around like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm in. They're like, what? You can't be in, bro. You can't. I mean, what? Look, I was like, no, it's it. He's our guy. He's our guy. And it's almost like once you come out, I remember going to Trump Tower before that and buying one in the lobby, because that's the only place you could get them at that point, was in Trump Tower lobby in New York City. But it was authentic. It was, he's our fighter. Like, this is a break glass in case of war moment, and that's what Donald Trump is going to do. And then once you have, but it's amazing. I met a woman in a diner this morning, Will, who had her conversion 2 days ago, basically after Trump was, yes, coming into she said, I've never been a Trump person. I was a Nikki Haley person, but watching him walk into the convention on Monday, after what he went through and the look on his face, I think he's a changed man. It doesn't mean I think he's going to say everything perfect or the way I want, but I'm all in behind Trump. So there's a sliding scale, and it's a very long one, but I like that. I agree with you. I like that about J.D. Vance. I think it shows intellectual honesty. He was pretty stubborn about it for a while, but he wasn't very politically involved or invested for a long time when he made those comments. But then when he looked at who was a champion for the communities he wrote about, that he lived with, that he talked about, it became very clear. And I think that's why Trump likes him. I mean, and what you hear from people that don't know much about J.D. Vance, they say, I trust Trump. If Trump thinks he's all in and is the right guy for the job, then I'm in for him, which is, again, another reflection of how much folks are behind him.
All right, we should do that show.
I wrote a whole chapter about this. I wrote a whole chapter about this in my book, American Crusade. It's the start of the chapter is, "Hi, my name is Pete Hegseth, and I was almost a never Trumper." And I wrote it because I wanted people to see. And I tell a story. About the National. Remember that National Review cover where it was the Never Trumper in gold?
Talked about it yesterday.
And all the names of the byline on the bottom. Okay, Rich Lowry wrote that, and I remember that thing came out because I had been a writer for National Review and done stuff with them. It came out, and I remember calling Rich, and I shouldn't admit this, but I've already admitted it in writing. It's true. Calling Rich and saying, "Rich, why didn't you ask me to be on that cover? I want to be."
Really?
And thank goodness he didn't. Yes. And I wasn't, and he didn't. But that's where my head was at that point, and because of fellow crews I had run in the past and the way I had seen the world.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because I talked about that National Review cover yesterday. Apropos of nothing, I ended up reaching out to a guy I haven't spoken to in a long time, National Review guy who I really think highly of, really smart, never been on the Trump bandwagon, and was part of that. And he was telling me, I think he's not, I don't think he's never Trump, but he also hasn't gone through his full conversion. Like he's like still in flux, right? But he's definitely not on the left, and he's not like a Bill Kristol, whatever Bill Kristol's doing, right? But one of the things he said was like how little impact that magazine cover had. Like, and that like 75% of the guys whose names are on the cover of that magazine are now pro-Trump.
Yes, it's true. It's amazing.
All right, man, I want to talk to you about this. And you said something in the wake of the assassination attempt on Saturday. You said it Sunday morning, and I think you've been proven very, very prescient on this. And that is, this has been a tough story in a lot of ways, Pete. And I know you're geared this way, I'm geared this way. And the truth is most conservatives are geared this way. Like a great amount of respect for law enforcement and people that put their life on the line. And so you have all this great respect and you want to honor them, and you also want to analyze the clear failures of that day. But one of the things we should be able to point out is, I don't know if we call it a minor victory or what, but Trump rally goers notice that guy up on the roof. They cause a commotion. That sends a local law enforcement officer apparently, up a ladder, I think it is, to peek over the edge and make eye contact with the shooter, who turns to him and turns his weapon at the law enforcement officer. This is according to reports. The cop drops at that point. He's got an AR pointed at his face. He drops. But the whole thing they're suggesting, local law enforcement is certainly suggesting, rushed the shooter along. And might have, because of that, saved the life of Donald Trump.
I've heard the same reports. I mean, it is, and again, I have the same respect that you do, but I do think it saved the life of Donald Trump. I don't have my arms around all the mistakes that were made, and you're following it. They were monitoring this guy for 30 minutes, people going in and out of the building. The sniper team was actually in the very building that he went on top on. Now the Secret Service, loser Secret Service ladies running around saying it was a sloped roof, so it was a safety issue that we couldn't put people on top of it. The counter sniper team sounds like it wasn't Secret Service. It was maybe a local sniper team, and so did they have the full go-ahead to preemptively shoot? We don't know all of these things. I still add it up to gross negligence, incompetence, mistakes, human error in the moment. That man popping up on the ladder, like how long was he down? Why did he stay down? Did he attempt to get back up? Did he attempt to call for other people? Was there confusion in the communications? Forget all of that right now. Ultimately, vigilant, proactive Trump supporters saw something wrong and they said something about it. And I think it's a reflection of a group of people who've been trained to be vigilant, trained to be bold, willing to speak up, and they did. And there's no doubt that this 20-year-old punk is up there, shitting his pants, about to do something, and he knows he's been found out, and who knows how much he trained, and all that other stuff. But ultimately, he's up there. If you've been in a situation like that, we've all been in high-intensity situations. Your breathing is up. I don't care who you are in that moment. He's nervous, and now he's been found out, and there are people yelling loudly about it. That means he knows his time is limited. He's got to get up there, and even just a simple movement on anything you've shot, I've shot, anything like that, will cause an inch, 6 inches on and off in either direction, and that could have been all that it takes. So I do credit a lot those people on the ground for creating an environment where he was uncomfortable and rushed, and that might have been the difference in 3 inches or an inch or a centimeter that threw it off. And it wasn't, the Secret Service obviously took care of him 3 seconds later or whatever it was, and without that, sure, he could have kept shooting conceivably, but that first shot is the one he's most trained in on, and the fact that he missed, I credit in large part, those folks on the ground.
I want to analyze a couple of those things, but to your point of the people on the ground, and I think you're right. I think you are definitely right to praise those people. And I'm going to say because of their instinct. So 2 things that are fascinating to me. You see the ladder? I don't know if you've seen the pictures of the ladder, Pete. It's like a big A-frame ladder. That's what it looks like to me. It's a big ladder that he got up on the roof on. He walked through the crowd with that ladder and placed the ladder and nobody stops him.
Is that the report?
He bought the ladder that day.
With the ladder?
Well, no. I need to be clear. But I believe I'm correct on this. He bought the ladder that day.
But he placed it that day then.
Okay, wait, hold on real quick. 2 days. 2 days. You're telling me he bought the ladder the night before?
Yeah, so they're saying 48 hours just before at Home Depot he bought the ladder.
But okay, that gives him time. He could have gone the day before and placed the ladder. Or he walks through the crowd. Pete, I mean, one of the guys on my show said, a ladder in confidence. Yeah, but you know what, man? A tool belt, a ladder, and confidence will get you past a lot of security checkpoints.
That's fair.
I will tell you, have you ever had a media pass, Pete, that is not a full media pass? I have because I've been in sports, and I'm like, this is good for this area, but I don't get field access. And by the way, my friend Pete's with me, and he doesn't have one. And I've done this thing, just follow me. And I walk super confidently, and nobody stops you. And I do wonder if that kid is just
walk right past.
Walking around with a back. That kid's walking around with a backpack and a ladder, and everybody's like, guess he's supposed to be here. But my point is, on the crowd, there was alarm bells in the crowd's head because it is very easy in all situations for the average human being to go, I don't know, I guess that's what it's supposed to happen. I guess that's supposed to be happening, right? Instead of leaping to, could that be an assassin?
Oh, it's so true. I mean, I fight it in my own life, and I don't care how trained you are or what your background is. Well, this isn't happening here, and, well, he must be there for a reason, and there's security guards over there, and they're not doing anything, so what role do I have to play? I mean, I do think it's a rowdy sense of understand. I'm not saying it's exclusive to Trump supporters. I'm not. But if you spend a lot of time with Trump supporters or with these patriots, they're independent-minded, they're bold people who speak their opinions. They're willing to think outside the box. They've been taking criticism and, oh, you're this or you're that, and so they've got a little bit of a stiffer spine. But I ultimately think what came down to it is probably one person saw a random person with a gun and said, a guy with a gun that looks like that shouldn't be on top of that building or shouldn't be on top of that ladder. And then by spreading that information, it's that courage and that insight spread like wildfire. You're right, though. I want to know. This is a story like you. You're so good at analyzing and trying to get new detail. I'm thirsty for more details. I'm going to go after this when I've got a little downtime and just search what more. And I don't know if this Secret Service lady's head,
I would like one thing.
Here's that's shocking to me.
Yeah, I mean the slope excuse is ridiculous. That's not real. I mean, I think it's probably literally not real because. You just told me, which I heard for the first time, that the counter sniper team might not have been Secret Service, but those dudes were definitely perched on a sloped roof. So I'm just not buying that. And Dan Bongino has said somebody didn't show up for their post that day that was supposed to have that area covered. He's reported that. And I don't know, Pete. Here's something I'm thirsty for: is the engagement protocol that, can you preemptively shoot? And when can you preemptively shoot? And I've read that maybe they can't preemptively shoot, So I don't know. If they did have him spotted and glassed for a half hour, and even if they did know he was on the roof, were they going to take that shot? They did shoot him quickly after he unleashed, I don't know how many shots he ended up getting off. I know we've reported 6 to 8 shots. I don't know how many were his versus counter sniper. But you know, I'd be real curious to know if they were allowed to take that preemptive shot, and if so, why didn't they? I mean, the environment around law enforcement is also just like, you better be no, because if you fail,
Yep.
you're splashed across CNN.
You're right. Is this just a long tail of like the Ferguson effect, where this cop may technically have the ability, but knows that it's his hide if he makes the wrong call? Or was there actually someone in his ear saying, you know, if it really was 30 minutes, then there's definitely, or even if it was 5, there's definitely radio interaction that went on between that shooter and higher headquarters, or whoever the commander on the ground is, to give him the high sign or not to fire. If we don't have a protocol with Secret Service, I guess, could he be concerned that it was one of their own on that he hasn't yet identified up on a rooftop, and as a result didn't feel comfortable? I mean, you could conceive of that kind of confusion and fog of a moment, but I think in 90 seconds you could be able to verify something like that. But if you have different units, different police units in different places, I don't know, something went terribly wrong, and this is the kind of thing that needs the highest level investigation possible.
All right, Pete Hegseth here. By the way, I want to give you some responses from people jumping in here on that conversion conversation you and I have had about Donald Trump. Two-a-days back in the studio can put these up. These are some of the things. I'll read them to you, Pete, on what people are saying. Harvey says, I always voted Democrat. I couldn't bring myself to vote for Hillary. I started reading and listening about Trump. This will be the 3rd time I will vote for him. Let's keep going. 2 days. What else do you have? Let's run through a few of these real quick before we respond. Glenn says, I'm just an average dude, but I wasn't a, quote, Trump guy in the beginning. I was a Cruz guy in 15, but after, I think it was in Iowa in 16, I started to turn and convert. That's a little bit like your story, Pete. Mama A says, I'm not positive on when exactly he won me over, as I was not a fan, but what stands out is the debate with Hillary Clinton. He had me at, you'd be in jail. Is that Dave Chappelle's moment? Dave Chappelle's like, she's like, he doesn't pay his taxes, and Trump goes, and that makes me smart, and he was like, this guy. And if you wanted me to pay my taxes, you'd change the tax code, but I know you won't, because all your rich donors, they take the same exemptions that I do.
Yes, like that kind of stuff is what pulled people. For me, it was him pointing out, there was 2 moments in particular. It was a press conference where I remember he looked at the press. He's like, you're an idiot. You're a loser. You've always been dumb. Next. And I was like, and I remember Rush Limbaugh calling it, whatever it was, he called it the press conference Republicans have been waiting for 20 years. And then the other one was the protests against him. I remember, I'll never forget can't remember exactly when it was, but it was in Southern California, and he had to get snuck into the back door because there were so many protests, and the protocol of getting there was messed up. But I remember seeing Mexican flags everywhere, flags of other countries in protest of Donald Trump because he was talking about building a wall. And I remember just that moment going, wait, so this guy wants to secure our border, and the guys against him are flying flags of another country because he's talking about America first? Like, I think this guy's over the target. It was just for everybody. There's just a little bit of a moment where you're like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Right. 2 more real quick. I know you got 1 or 2 more real quick. 2-a-days. Throw them up. Comments who are
this
part of
one's
the Will
about
Cain
you.
Show right now. Oh, this one's about me. CDA, the only reason you weren't initially for Trump, Will, is because you were at woke ESPN and they were brainwashing you. Well, you know what? Here's the truth on that. Pete and I have known each other a long time, and I was in the world of news and politics, way back, whatever it was, 09, 10, 11, through 15, 14, roughly, 14, 15. And Pete, when I went to ESPN, I did take a break. Like, I wasn't in the daily grind of news and politics. I'd still paid attention, and I cared, but there's a different way of consuming news that today I think informs me about how people do. And I got more close to that vein of news consumer where it washes over you. And what was washing over you at that time was all the most negative stuff about Trump, and in retrospect, false. Like, very fine people or whatever. Like, that's just washing over you. And you had to really dig to go, that's not true. And so it's not that I was never woke, I was never brainwashed, and I was never even on the left. I've never voted Democrat in my life, but I also wasn't a Trump guy because this stuff was washing over me as a casual consumer of the news.
Well, you were always a conservative. I know that from having been on TV with you many years ago. But I know exactly how that goes because I think about that Very Fine People hoax, Charlottesville. I was on the air the next morning, and I remember the amount of research I did that night and the next morning to sort of get to the base of what was going on there. And I took a ton of heat for defending Trump the next morning based on pointing out the fact that what he said is not what you're saying he's saying. And this is not a right. And it was not, but it was only because I was totally enveloped in the media cycle and willing to say, okay, I know how these things go. Otherwise, there's no reason to attempt to defend it if you're getting washed over by the conventional narrative because it's an impossible one to overcome. I totally get that. And I remember we talked about a lot of this when you first came over to Fox. You were a conservative like everybody else, sorting out the sort of the wake of what Donald Trump creates.
Right. Gary Wallace on YouTube says Trump walks the walk and talks the talk. And Daisy Reyes says, I started changing my mind about Trump in 1718. If I'm being real, Pete, when I first joined, I wasn't fully like, I get it. If I had to pinpoint, it's somewhere in 1718 where I started going. And it may actually have been Very Fine People. What year was that, Pete? Very Fine People. Was that about 1718? Somewhere in there?
Yeah, I had to look at it. I can't remember.
2 days just jumped in my ear and said August 17. And I actually think that was part of it because there was a moment, it wasn't right away. It may have even been a year later where I started going, I just started understanding that's not what he did. That's not what he said. And once that thing unraveled for me in my mind, then everything starts unraveling a little bit. And you're like, none of what I've been told is true. And look, I'm not sitting here saying he's a saint. It's not all of a sudden you go, whoom, and he's perfect. No, it's not what I'm getting at. But the bulk of what I was sold was false. It wasn't real.
Yes.
And it started unraveling. All right, hey, real quick, how's the convention, man?
Very easy. Go for it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, the convention. No, I was just going to say it's very easy to sit back and try to take him literally and not understand how he speaks, and then you can just sit in a poopy diaper of your outrage because you're not willing to engage with what he says. Do you know what I mean? It's always, I think, been the case with him. The convention has been fascinating. I mean, if you think about it, in 2016, there was, Ted Cruz refused to endorse him. There was a lot of contention. 2020 was a COVID convention, and yet here we are 2 days in, and every opponent that he had has endorsed him. It's universal. It's not as if it's just this outlier group that's sort of protesting him. And then after Saturday, it has this sort of glow over it. I'd say it's so optimistic that it's almost maybe I don't want to say too optimistic. It's very optimistic about America, properly so. But sort of, I think you'll have a lot of people come out of this saying, "Oh, this is in the bag," and I think that's a false comfort. Consider, yes, there's a lot of chaos on the Democrat side. Yes, God's hand is on the shoulder of Donald Trump. Yes, it so far has been a well choreographed, strong convention with great messaging. But there's a lot to come in the future, and the ground game has to be robust. And do they make a switcheroo? But it's as optimistic a moment as I would compare it to. What would I give? There was a Patriot Awards that happened, I think, after a big event. That was. I mean, I would compare it to the State of the Union in 2020, which was, I think, in January of 2020. And the economy was soaring. COVID wasn't here yet. None of this stuff is all the riots. None of that. And Trump was at his peak. He was given the Medal of Freedom to Rush Limbaugh, and it looked like, hey, everything is on fast track for a re-election. And then a lot changed. So this is a high for America First folks, for Republicans, for Trump supporters.
Yeah. Okay.
But
what is the bar scene like? Yeah, but what's the bar scene like? Are you in some hotel rooms? Are you in some hotel rooms partying? Give me a little color. Who are you drinking with? Who are you hanging with? What are you doing?
Well, I have a pretty regular schedule. Well, first of all, Jen and Gwen are here with me, so I've got. Second of all, I've got a Fox Nation show at 10 o'clock at night after the convention. So I wait all day, watch all the speeches. Then I do the show from 10 to 11. And thankfully, there's a little private bar right there, so we stay after. And a lot of the other hosts and stuff are there. And we just have a drink and then walk back to the hotel. There is a huge scene elsewhere. I mean, I'm actually quite happy. I've been to other conventions and been a part of all that party scene. I'm very happy to not be a part of it because it's find this party, find that party. Who can get into this? Who can get into that? Who is it? Inside security? Is it outside security? And then it all can devolve in any particular direction. I know it exists. I've just haven't accepted an invitation to a single thing because I got to be up, and then I got to be up in the morning. At 5 in the morning, and I like, as we talk about all the time, I want to feel good. I don't want to be hungover.
I know. I have never. I've been to a convention or two. I've never been a part of the party scene. I've done Super Bowl parties, and those are pretty fun. I just can't wrap my mind around the political dork party.
Come on.
I'm sure it's great.
I mean, it has a different function. Like, athletes are going to party in a different way than political pundits who, there's a lot of self-segregating. So, like, the Fox people will party with Fox, and the CNN people are over here, and then this delegation's over here, and, this group. So I'm
in the same
sure
bar?
Trump world's over here. Sometimes, like,
our hotel
I'd love
that.
The same as our hotel.
I'd love Red Rover.
CNN hotel.
Oh, it's great. I would love to see Brian Kilmeade make his way over to the CNN huddle. Red Rover, let Ducey come over, whatever. And then who wanders over to mingle with you guys? I saw
Kilmeade was having breakfast. Ducey was having breakfast 2 tables over from Wolf Blitzer. And last night when we got back, I went and grabbed a drink, and I think a couple of CNN hosts were behind me. I've had no interaction because I'm not interested, but I have no doubt that Will, you would mix it up in that environment and have fun with it. I appreciate that.
Oh, I would. I like the mix it up part. Yeah, and I'd force you to. It'd be fun. All right, man. You probably got your wife and Gwen right there. I appreciate you giving us so much time today. I know you got a packed schedule. I've been seeing you've been doing a great job. I see you on Hannity and Ingram and so forth and Fox Nation. So you're doing a great job. Thanks for giving us some time today here, bud.
Brother. Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Always. We'll see you this weekend.
All right. Take care. There goes Pete Hegseth off the rails here on the Will Cain Show. All right, let's take a quick break and we'll come back with some of your comments on everything we've been talking about today, from your conversion to Donald Trump to whether or not the bench is deeper than is Trumpism bigger than Trump, and the latest on the attempted assassination of Donald Trump coming up on the Will Cain Show.
It's time to take the quiz.
5 questions, 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week.
History, pop culture, science, sports, civics. How much do you know? Let's find out.
Who was the first person to walk on the moon?
Jackson or something?
Neil Armstrong.
Take the quiz every weekday at thequiz.fox and then listen to the quiz podcast to find out how you did.
Play, share, and of course listen to The Quiz right now at thequiz.fox.
This is an election year unlike any other.
That's why you need America's #1 most watched news source, Fox News. Stay with us.
All the way to election night.
The candidates
are ready.
I believe in America. I believe in you, the American people.
We will fight for America like no one has ever fought before.
Americans across the country are ready.
And so are we.
This is Democracy 24.
Your freedom, your vote.
Fox News.
America is watching.
The world of business moves fast. Stay on top of it with the Fox Business Rundown. Every Monday and Friday, Fox Business reporters, anchors, and hosts will bring you beneath the stock market speculation and boardroom drama to tell you about the biggest business stories of today. Whether you're on Main Street or Wall Street, Fox Business is invested in you. Listen to the Fox Business Rundown every Monday and Friday at foxbusinesspodcasts.com, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you download your favorite podcasts.
The 3 most badass responses to an attempted assassination in the history of the United States. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, the Fox News YouTube channel, and the Fox News Facebook page. On terrestrial radio, every day I wake up, tinfoil Pat. What did we just get? We got Catskills, New York the other day. Now we're in Carmel, California, coast to coast, Texas, wherever. We're day by day growing on stations across the country.
We got a big one coming up in a couple weeks. So we can't. I don't think we can
We
say
do have a
anything
big
yet,
one.
but it's a big one. It's going to be good.
Yeah. And look, that's a new thing for us here. To be honest, like, when I launched this,
breathe.
rub my face. Okay.
Fix your hair.
There's things I desire for this to be, and we're getting there, right? And I didn't see radio down. I didn't see that coming. And so we're super pleased, is my point. I've got a grand scheme. This is what people need to know about me. I am ambitious, but I'm not ambitious like, I want your seat at Fox. And, in this career, there's a lot of that. It's like, this is a zero-sum game. I want what you have. You don't get it because I want it. And it's pretty gross. It's not pervasive. It's not everywhere, but it definitely exists. That's not my kind of ambition. Because I came from the entrepreneurial world before. I started a magazine, a newspaper. So I'm like, I'm starting this. I want to do this. I want to create this specific thing, and this is where I want it to be. But like in anybody who's an entrepreneur, you got to be able to pivot and go and take it where it goes. I didn't see radio as part of the grand plan. My point is I'm ambitious, and here we are. All of a sudden, I don't know how many stations we're up to now, but let's put it this way. It's more than I ever thought. Because I never thought it would be at all. And I'm super appreciative. So if you're driving around New York, if you're driving around Houston, Texas, if you're driving around California, and you're listening to the Will Cain Show, we love you. I love having you with us. And by the way, Spotify, Apple, you can listen to us whenever you want as well. I pictured it by you subscribing to YouTube. And by the way, we've been kicking ass.
Yeah.
40,000, 50,000, 120,000 over the last couple of weeks watching us on YouTube. I would love for you to drop in. The problem is if you do it, let me know where you're listening or watching. But if you're on YouTube, you're clearly going to say on YouTube. If you're on Facebook, you're going to say on Facebook. So I'm not sure how useful that will be. Ann Breitrick jumps in and says, good morning, boys. I actually don't know if that's for you guys.
Well,
I think it's for you guys. I don't think that's for Pete.
She's the one that said, love the team yesterday, remember? Love the staff.
Yes.
Yeah.
We love Ann.
They love you back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Salty Marine says on YouTube, my liberal friends are waking up. They had social media train. Your texts aren't coming through very well. What does that say, two-a-days?
Hold on.
I know. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know. Let's see.
We're being monitored.
My liberal friends are waking up. They had social media brainworms for a minute.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Brainworms. Okay.
To get a new phone.
It's yours,
It's
not
mine.
mine.
No, it's
right?
mine.
Yeah. Tinfoil Pat sent us this the other day. I like historical context. I like thinking of things in historical context. I think we need to do a better job of diving into history on everything. One of the best series we ever did here on the Will Cain Show was when we went into the deep history of Ukraine. When that war broke out. And then separately, we went into the deep history of the conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis when that war broke out. And I think that's part of what I hope to offer, like just a little more depth in history and context. Donald Trump's not the first president, obviously, to survive assassination attempt. Of course, the most recent example that we all harken back to is Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan whisked away after being shot by John Hinckley in the 1980s. Immediately, Secret Service barrels him into an awaiting limousine, and they drive away. But while we didn't get to see Ronald Reagan's immediate response, we did get to see Donald Trump's, which has now become the stuff of legend and will. I mean, this is iconic. Raising his hand, raising his head, raising his fist, fight, 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 multiple times. It's so iconic that there is now a debate apparently among photojournalists about whether or not the infamous image now, I don't know if infamous is the right word to use, famous, infamous, iconic image, legendary image of Donald Trump surrounded by Secret Service with the American flag flying in the background with his fist raised, whether or not they should be running that because it's of too much value to a campaign, which is like, I guess I'm so naive. I always thought the reason I got into this was to tell the truth. And the picture is the truth. Let the chips fall where they may after you tell the truth. Like, that happened, photogs. So if somebody seems to like it, that's sort of on them, not you. Just tell the truth. But for all that, fight, 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 raise your fist, it probably comes in third when it comes to badasses' responses to an attempted assassination on an American president. So will Alicia come back in? If we're putting Donald Trump third, I'm going to say second. And I think this is actually a close call. Not between second and third, but between first and second. I'm going to give second to Andrew Jackson, a would-be assassin with 2 pistols, jams, doesn't get a shot off, and Andrew Jackson starts immediately beating the assassin with his cane.
Savage. I mean, that's a president I want.
I'm going to tell you something. Same scenario, 100% that's what Trump would do.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
I also want to note, well, keep going. On
go ahead.
The Theodore Roosevelt one, which we may or may not
Oh, you're
mention
jumping
now.
ahead. Yeah, that was a
that's why
bad
I'm
that was a
taking it
bad
back.
editorial call. Bad editorial call. Every time I
Young.
want to trust you, you do that.
Learning.
Every time I give you the go-ahead, this is what you do.
So
Go
in
ahead,
regards
tinfoil.
to Jackson, I am proud. Jacksonville, like you said, is the pawn shop of America. And I think there's a lot of that is true. But I am proud that our city's named after Andrew Jackson. He was pretty cool in some ways.
If only he could see it now.
I know.
Trump had a bust. Trump had a.
He'd be so proud.
Trump had his portrait in the Oval Office in his first term.
Yep, that's true.
Dude. Yep. All right.
That factoid is correct, James. You're going to have a primetime show at this rate, James. All right. And number 1 on this sloppy list of badass responses to a would-be presidential assassin, Teddy Roosevelt, who took a shot to the chest. Tinfoil, what did the bullet go through? Did it go through a flask, a speech, a pocketbook, or just straight into his pec?
Like James was saying, it hit part of his speech. So he had his speech folded up in his pocket, and it also hit his eyeglasses case. And so it was made out of metal, and and that's how it ended up not going far enough into his lung. And being a hunter, he knew as long as he wasn't bleeding, he was okay, and he kept going.
And he gave the rest of his speech. Stood there, bullet in his pec, and finished his speech. Man, that's when you didn't have to tell Secret Service, let me get my shoes.
Yeah.
You know what? When did Secret Service come around? I'm embarrassed I don't know that history. And who was protecting Teddy Roosevelt back then, back in the day?
It used to be under the Secretary of Treasury because it was it was to guard over counterfeit, and then at some point I think it was right after Lincoln they became to protect the president.
I have the date.
Well, it was real quick. I think it was under the Department of Treasury until recently, until DHS, right?
Yep.
Very recently.
Yeah,
it was
under
an Office
Bush.
of Treasury.
So July.
What's up, Two-Days?
July 5th, 1865, the U.S. Secret Service was founded. 1865.
Really?
Yep.
That's after Lincoln's assassination?
Yeah.
They decide it's necessary. So before that, Lincoln's walking around with what?
Yeah.
What kind of protection? Does he have military protection around him?
A top hat.
Does he have anything? That's terrible.
Took it off.
Yeah, I wish I'd had a little more history baked in. I didn't exactly go as deep as I did on the war in Ukraine and Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Trump apparently told Brett Baer that he wanted to say a few words and finish the speech, and they were just like, no, absolutely not. You're getting out of here.
Oh, he couldn't. They wouldn't allow him
Yeah.
to. No. Right. Yeah, tinfoil.
So the Secret Service did not protect the president initially. It wasn't until the assassination of President McKinley in 1901 that they started protecting the president. Congress had them start protecting the president. So there were a lot
So they were
of
founded in
assassinations.
65.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're founded in 65, but not assigned to the protection of the president until after McKinley's.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fascinating.
So between
All right. By the way, did you just take him down?
Yeah.
It's going great, guys. It's going great. One last comment. Gary Wallace. He walks the walk and talks the talk.
People are checking in.
I thought we had one more. Yeah, what are they saying?
So they're saying people are checking in from where they're watching from, saying Lake Placid, listening from Minnesota, Timber Ape Outdoors. Ozzy Osborne says Central Illinois. Someone watching from Gold Coast, Australia, they're saying. Dave Hutchinson. So we appreciate you.
Dave.
The Australians
What's up,
love
Dave?
meddling in GOP politics.
What is this about now? What
just
is
online
this?
commentators, That's...
What are you talking about? What is the latest entry in your Pulitzer Prize winning commentary?
Should have stuck with the Reagan quotes.
2 days.
Yeah.
2 days. Read for me White Candle. What White Candy. Is that what that says? White Candy? We've got to get this fixed. I can't read any of these comments.
Yeah. I'm just trying to keep your job as hard as possible.
Danny Maldonado says, Trump is okay. What they need to focus on is how it was allowed and not stopped, talking about the attempted assassination.
Yep, and White Candle says an untrained 20-year-old outwits the Secret Service with its billion-dollar funding. What's wrong with that picture?
I know. This is what we said yesterday. I think the responsible thing is to keep an open mind and ask questions while respecting the people that take an oath of office and do that job and put their life on the line. You can do all these things at the same time. Remain responsible, remain open-minded, and demand answers for what exactly happened here, right here, to President Trump. All right. Audibles, a mess, and a finale. That does it for us today here on the Will Cain Show. Hope you will hang out with us every day, Monday through Thursday live. I think we're going to do a special edition after Donald Trump's speech on Thursday night, so make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube and you keep up with the latest from the Will Cain Show. See you next time.